Welcome to Share.Care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.Care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.Care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Hello and welcome to the Share.Care podcast. Our belief is that global peace starts at home. Feeling safe, valued, and heard gives you a foundation to confidently step out and make the world a happier and safer place for everyone. Because in today's world, it's in your own selfish best interest to help others. Now, today we have Dr. Linda Marsanico as our special guest. Now, Linda is a psychologist with an integrative and spiritual focus. Her speciality is on psychodynamic work with children, adolescents, and family. Linda utilizes the beauty and function of playing, including fantasy, creativity, and energy flow to align the conscious and unconscious. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you so much, Damian. I'm so happy to be here with you this evening.
It is evening for me and it's morning for you.
Yes. And I was just
Go ahead.
I was just telling you that I'm such a morning person that this is perfect for me.
Yeah, no, the timing has aligned well because I've just finished a couple of things and I'm about to relax for the evening. So to have a nice conversation with you is great. And maybe we could start with a bit of your background and some of the challenges that you've faced that led you to do what you're doing now.
I am the oldest child of 4 children, growing up in an Italian-American family. And it was only later that my father's cousin did some genealogy, and he said Marsanicos came from Russia, Romania, and Italy in the late 1800s and 1900s. So I'm Italian, Russian, and Romanian. Now, my family, my parents are now deceased. We're a very hardworking family, with strong work ethic. From the beginning, I was very shy, even when I was the first child with no other siblings. Shy, sensitive, a listener. And then the other children came along, and I remember thinking, oh, less for me. With everyone that came, oh, less for me. And they kind of took over, and I became quite the observer and the listener. And look at the profession that I chose. I chose to be a psychologist, and I wanted to be a psychologist so much I could taste it. That's how much I wanted to be a psychologist. I wanted to express myself with my clients to make a difference. And I felt by having the PhD, I would have credibility. To me, it was the perfect career. And in the studies, D.W. Winnicott is perhaps my favorite theorist. He has his feminine and masculine sides balanced. In order to be an analyst, he had to be analyzed by both Melanie Klein and Anna Freud, who were arch rivals. And he came out with the most beautiful theories of being alone in the presence of mother. And in order to develop empathy, empathy has to be shown to you. Just beautiful play. He focused on play. He was a Mr. Mom. And then I must say, I had always wanted to have an internship at a hospital, but it never happened. It was only recently that I remembered that my path was to take me in a different route, a route where I could develop my own ideas of goals for my clients, strategies that work outside of the kind of the routine medical model. And I remember sitting with my clients at this one period of time. We learned diagnoses and all these technical things. And I thought, I want them to love themselves more. That's what I would say, my goal for you is to love yourself more. And of course, it became my goal to love myself more. Because in order to heal the planet, I need to heal myself. And there are two things that are extremely difficult: looking at myself and being a parent, a literal parent to my children. I have found those. Getting a PhD is challenging. There have been other challenges, which I'll share with you. And I began to develop an integrative way of working. And then I became itchy. I wanted to be able to express myself. And so I wrote a book. Now, this book was written about 11 years ago. And my first editor said, "You need to have a blog." I said, "Stephanie, there's no way I want to be writing. No way." And I sent the book out to publishers and they got rejected. And I thought, I got to get a blog. So the blog was born in January 2013. And at first it was every week, and then every other week, every month. Now I'm getting ready to renovate an apartment in Manhattan. It's a co-op. And I've been living with my sister for 8 months in preparation for all the approvals. And the book has to stay and wait again. It's sitting ready to be published, but I can't focus on renovating an apartment, thinking about knobs and tiles and publicizing my book. So we're thinking summer of 2023. And I continue as a coach as well, going back to my work. I'm a spiritual coach, and when clients are interested, I ask them, do you meditate? Do you do mantra? They're beautiful for relaxing. And I use a number of toolkit items for my clients. So I want to say that and let you ask any questions, and then we can kind of go from there.
Wow. You mentioned about self-love, and I noticed that one of the key things on your in your website and in the articles that you've written, that I've read, and you talk about the goal of self-love and to accept and know yourself. Now, you mentioned that you were the first child, and then other children come along, and it's like, oh no, where's all the love going to be for me? How do you help people overcome that challenge of realizing, that they may not, or they're thinking of that they may not get enough love? I mean, what the steps people can go through to recognize that, get enough love from outside? But also, the two part of this question is, how do you start to, if you don't love yourself, how do you start to do that? How do you start to actually love yourself?
It's a process. One technique, and this is a process I find in working with clients. I don't know that I would recommend it for someone working on their own, although there might be a book or two that could help somebody. I'm all for people doing what they can on their own. But when I'm working with a client, it comes in the process of a trusting relationship. And I ask, what do your children within feel about that? Where is, and then we could do a Buddhist meditation. And I ask the client, where do you feel the itch, the pain, the discomfort? And we go to that area.
Yeah.
We speak to that area. What are you trying to tell me? What do you need from me? And then they journal about that. And they get in a dialogue with their younger selves. It could be an adolescent self. It could be a 4-year-old. It could be someone I don't know the age of, but he's wanting to speak to me now. So the journaling comes in. And then there's the knowledge that when we were children, we have no power. But now we have power,
Yeah.
and we have the power to parent our internal children and give them what they need. So, really, the most important relationship, when you think of the prayer position, it's right here,
Yeah.
it's in the middle. And we can heal ourselves by looking within, dialoguing. That's one big strategy, dialoguing with the inner children. One client wanted to go to the park and color in a coloring book. She had
Very
never
good.
done
Wow.
that. Another way is to use Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's grief stages. And these are not mutually exclusive. Whatever works, we play with whatever works. And when I say to my clients, this is homework, it's not like school. If I suggest homework and you don't want to do it, it means it's not relevant right now.
Yeah.
I missed the mark. And then that becomes information that we work with.
Yeah.
So with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages, we have shock and denial,
Hmm.
anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance.
Yeah.
Now, often it's past the shock and denial, but denial could be there. And then there's bargaining.
Mm.
Something happens. If only it didn't happen. If only I had said this. That has you going around in psychological cyberspace. And what I suggest we do in that instance is go right to feeling sad or depressed about something, experiencing it, acknowledging it. This is happening. This happened, and I must accept that it happened. That's the end result. Well, nothing is ever the end, but it's the end of that phase because we can go round and round in the stages. You could wake up in the morning and say, if only I had said that. It's bargaining and it leads nowhere. It's a moot point. And then we can love ourselves by understanding what we're thinking, because thoughts can go around and around, and we don't realize that they're from childhood, that they're automatic thoughts, and they can be negative thoughts. So, knowing what we're thinking, using meditation and mantra, looking at the influences from the past, meaning the unconscious, not dwelling on them, but bringing them up to understand the influence, has us be aware, and then letting go of what doesn't serve. And there is work to be done. As children, I'll speak for myself. I had to deal with, you should do this, you should do that, from parents, from schools, from Uncle Sam. Uh, should. And the task of me as an adult is to tease that out, to say, is this what I believe? What do I believe? Who am I? Who do I wish to become? That's part of the process of loving myself. And also getting in touch with the unconscious can be found in everyday interactions. Someone comes in, they say something that could offend me. So instead of lashing out, I can say, "Oh, Linda, look at yourself in the mirror. What does your reaction tell you? What can you remember about yourself?" And a very good idea is to have a journal, to write these things down, not loads of information, just a little jot of something that you can come back to. So those are some of the ways that we can love ourselves and then treat ourselves well. Plan exercise and play, do things with people who uplift us, and let go of those who don't really care about us.
Wow.
Those are some ways.
Wow. Because you talk about this relationship, the most important relationship is the relationship you have with yourself. And you
Yes.
mentioned here, I made a note of your inner children. So when you're talking about that, is the inner children or the inner, is that parts of your history or that has stood out for you as a child where you've had things that have impacted you and you're reliving them and allowing those to influence your life? Is that what you're talking about? Is having that relationship and understanding that?
Yes, because if it's these inner children are influencing pain and suffering and repetition of uh, patterns that don't serve, they need your attention.
Yeah.
Now, also inside of us is creator, wrapped around every cell, through, in, around, about, you name it. So this is the focus, to take responsibility, to have an intention to be on the spiritual path, to take responsibility rather than blame someone else.
Right. And
It
when you
takes
talk, yes, I was going to say here, it does take courage. When you talk about, you went through that process of shock initially, and then it's bargaining. When we look at that bargaining component, so we have something that grabs our attention, and we start to then maybe having that struggle with your inner child, and we're bargaining. How much of that is holding on to what we know to feel safe? Because if we might be, because we know how to react that way. We, like someone like you mentioned before, you might be offended by something that someone says, which is a behavior that we've probably learnt somewhere. But then to do something different is stepping into the unknown, which can be fearful. So how much of that reaction is trying to stay safe as well?
You raise a very important point. We can easily stay in the uncomfortable, in the unhealthy, because we know it. But once we make an intention to be consciously on the spiritual path, we get onto ourselves if we choose to.
So it
Now,
starts with, sorry, go ahead.
an intention, an intention to face myself because I want to grow in compassion. I want to grow in self knowledge, grow in self love. I want to have good mental, physical health. Now, you asked a second part of that question. Would you, could you repeat that? The second part? You talked about staying close to something you know. Oh, you talked about it's the unknown is scary. Yeah, because if I stop complaining about my mother, she's this, she's that, she's this, she didn't do this, I don't have mental time to think about some other creative things that I could be doing because I'm focused on negativity. So once I have an intention to give that up, I think, who am I now? I'm a person kind of alone here. It could be a cartoon. Hey, I let my mother go. I'm a little scared. But going into beyond the comfort zone, as Neil Donald Walsh talks about, actually grows synapses in the brain.
Yeah.
Right? It's where we need to be going if we want to make that step. It's not for everyone. I've read a lot of Neil Donald Walsh's work, and do you know that work, Conversations with God?
A little bit of it, but no, not a lot. No.
So in one conversation, Neil says, God, I don't want to work on that. God says, don't worry, Neil, take 10,000 lifetimes. Neil says, oh, no, I have to deal with this now. I better deal with this now.
So
But it's
how,
choice.
so a lot of that, by the sounds of it, is that when you say it's choice, exactly, it's having that intention to want to do something different. And is that something that you need? Because a lot of people, from what I understand, need to go through some sort of trauma before they actually decide, okay, I've had enough, and that becomes the motivation for doing that. But can you
Yes,
do it the other way? Can what can drive people to go, well, actually, rather than going through the trauma, I'm just going to make a process of continually evolving. How does someone get to that state of awareness?
I think, the bell curve,
Mhm.
it goes like that.
Yeah.
There are the two tails, which are extreme. Oh, I very, very much want to be on the path. I don't ever want to see the path.
Yes.
And there are people who are going to be, for whatever reason, more desirous of knowing themselves and being on that, uh, taking that understanding to heart and cultivating it becomes more of a lifestyle after a while.
Mhm.
Now, it doesn't mean that we're always compassionate. I wanted to tell you at least one story from my book where I was not compassionate at all.
It happens. Yes. Can relate to that.
One of many, one of many. So
Yeah.
at the time, is this what you would like to talk about it in this segment? Is this
Yeah,
okay?
go for it. Yeah. Whatever you
Okay.
feel is gonna be helpful for the viewers, please feel free.
Okay. I lived in a condo, 3 families,
Yeah.
and on the top floor, later in life, they got pregnant, and they put their carriage right in front of my apartment door,
Yeah.
so that when I opened the door, 4 feet from the entrance was their carriage.
Yeah.
So I asked them, "Could you put the carriage in the outer vestibule? Could you put the carriage up 5 steps to the upper vestibule?" "No," was the response. And so for months, we were in conflict.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk with the wife. No, no, no. She was busy being a mother, a new mother. She didn't want to deal with this. The husband, the father talked a bit, but nothing changed. And in order, I think it was out of frustration, had to take a different tact because I was so unhappy. We were all unhappy. I'd walk out, the carriage was there. Ay, ay, ay. I'm just very sensitive to my surroundings.
Yeah.
I was in the city. I had a city view, cars, trees, very sensitive to the view.
Yeah.
So I developed the practice of saying, I am a bodhisattva. That's out of Buddhism. It means an enlightened master. Now, I'm not a bodhisattva, but I'm opting in to being a bodhisattva. I would come from work. I am a bodhisattva. I am a bodhisattva. I would repeat it again and again and again and again. And guess what happened? They moved the carriage. So, love, the vibration of love
Mm.
became a catalyst for them to shift. And we became friendly after that. And recently, about a year ago in the park, I ran into this
Oh.
gal. She moved. And prior to that, I said, I want to put this story in the book. Just change my name, she said. So I changed her name. And then I ran into her and I said, did you realize that I was saying I'm a bodhisattva? And she just looked at me and took it in.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a very beautiful reminder of negativity versus positivity. And by positivity, I mean the power of love.
Yeah.
And I want to say something else about love, unless you have any questions.
No, go.
Now, All You Need Is Love by the Beatles. All you need is love. All you need is love.
Exactly.
Spiritually, all we need is love, but we're in the third dimension where we have the ego with the negative emotions. So I did some research on the song and the music behind it.
Oh, wow.
And I listened to it, and they had Bach, they had the French national anthem, they had discordant notes, they had famous musicians playing guitar. And my interpretation of that is that all you need is love, but there's a lot of discord that has to be resolved before you can hop into the love vibration, just the way I needed something to get me to the bodhisattva moment in the carriage. I had to resolve my some of my anger, some of my wanting control over the situations, a whole series of growing that I had to get involved in before I could say, I'm a bodhisattva, I'm a bodhisattva. And it would melt everything. I'm a bodhisattva, I'm a bodhisattva. And so I don't know whether the Beatles had that in mind when they put all that very complex music together with a simple phrase, all you need is love. But that's my interpretation of it.
Interesting. So with that, because you deal with a lot of people that with anxiety, depression, and feeling stuck, how much of that is connected to this? In going back to where you're talking about self-love and accepting those situations and moving forward, as opposed to being stuck in that situation where you say that they are feeling stuck. How does that connect to that feeling of love for yourself? And what can someone do that might be feeling, bit tense or bit stuck or a little bit depressed? How do they make that leap and wake up in the morning and go, well, actually, I feel that love and I want to share that with the world.
I would say they need to look within and get to know themselves. So, you think of, I don't want to even say an onion, it's much more complex than that. We might have a ball of contradictions, and I want to make a crooked ball if you could see it here. And because let me tell you a story of research on depression as one aspect of this. In the 60s, Martin Seligman did a classic experiment with dogs, which you would not be able to do today because of cruelty to animals. But he ran dogs through a maze. And if they got through the maze, they were okay. If they didn't get through the maze, they got shocked. And then they decided to change up the experiment. And they shocked the dogs no matter what they did. And the dogs refused to get up after that. And they called it learned helplessness.
Right.
And they extrapolated it to depression a lot in women in the 60s. Valium was very overused. So when you think of that alone, I've been shocked so many times, no matter what I do, I can't get ahead, I'm stuck. And then you add other situations from childhood, from other experiences, friends, how life affects us, and a person doesn't know how to get out. And so in conversation after conversation, lifting the threads so that we can do this.
Yeah.
And then work, because the person is more clear
Yes.
on who they are, on on the direction they want to take. Negative emotions take up space, interfering with our ability to be in the moment. And they interfere with our hearing the voice of Creator. I don't know whether you've ever heard the voice of Creator. It happens from time to time with me.
Yeah.
So one time, I live in Brooklyn. When I'm living in Brooklyn, I'm staying with my sister in another borough while I'm homeless, so to speak, in a wonderful home. And I went so many places, I forgot where I was going with this. What did I say last?
You were looking for that. You had that homelessness. We were talking about moving from the depression, anxiety into that feeling of love. You were not sure where the story was going, but it was how to move, from that state of being stuck and opening the threads to be able to find where that not being stuck like the dog was stuck and feeling that hopelessness and that learned
Yeah.
hopelessness of being stuck.
So I was exercising in Prospect Park. This is going back 15 to 20 years. And I would go in with earphones, walking to the music, and it would motivate me. And I heard, take off the music,
Yeah.
take off the device. Because when I took off the device, I could hear the birds. I'm more aware of the beautiful smell of the trees and the flowers and the blossoms.
Hmm.
And it's a beautiful experience to be in Prospect Park. I don't know if you've ever heard of Central Park and Prospect Park. They were built by the same architects.
Yeah. I
There
know
was
of them. I
another,
haven't been there.
pardon?
I said I know of them, but I haven't been there yet. So it's on the list.
I haven't been to Australia yet. It's on a list.
It's okay. We'll get there.
And there
I'm a
was
big
another. Go ahead. Go,
No, I
go.
was going to say I'm a big NASCAR fan. I watch every race, so I need to get there and watch that to come and see them live. But I am looking forward to getting there.
That would be exciting,
Yeah.
watching a race.
Sorry.
So I'm reminded coming out of my gym
Hmm.
in the summer. It was so hot. I'm an early morning person. I was coming out of the gym at like 8 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
and the heat hit me. It just, and I thought, oh. And what I did was sort of, I don't know how to describe this, spread my molecules out. I accepted the heat.
Yeah.
And I walked across the street again, and I heard a bird singing.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, and I wrote about this in one of my blogs, if I had been focused on how hot it was, how I couldn't take it anymore in this August or July weather, I would have missed that songbird.
Yeah.
So that's what happens.
So today, I mean, it seems to be, we have that technology around us. We have our phones, we have social media, we have computers. And I know personally, I've made a conscious effort a long time ago. I turned off all my alerts, and my phone lives on silent. So I don't even know when a phone call comes. And I'll check my messages at certain points in the day, and my emails don't bing or do whatever sound effect it is. And how important is it to, like you say, to take that time to shut these things off? The other thing I guess I noticed with that was, I'll listen to a lot of parents complaining about how their kids are always on the phone, but then I look at the parent and the parent's doing exactly the same thing. It's like, well, who's the child modeling? Um, so I'm just wondering, should we make that conscious effort to take that time and shut those things off?
I think so. I think they're a blessing and a curse. So use them as they can be used best. And I have to work at that because lately, with people calling me all the time about the renovation and the approval, I constantly want to be there. I'm more on my phone than I've ever been, and I don't like it. And I like when I have the phone turned off or on silent in another room and check it every so often. And it would be wonderful if I checked my emails once in the morning, maybe once midday, and once in the evening, or less than that. Really, it's worth it because what can I say about these devices? They're seductive. And while all of my books are in storage, I do like to read. And reading stimulates the brain. Writing stimulates the brain. I'm not sure what this does to the brain, this device we're using. Now, I have glasses. I bought glasses with a protective coating for the blue light, which I feel good about. But I think it's essential that we limit. And we teach our kids to limit, because I've seen parents at dinner at a restaurant with the children under the table. Well, the parents are on the phone, one parent, or just the child being ignored. Um, I think we could do better than that.
Because does that connect with that feeling of love as well, like from a child's perspective? I was reading a study where it was like they were initially looking at how much connection there was between parents and children, and they found like for the dads, what they did was they put microphones on the parents, and then they went through and so what was the actual active time that the person was interacting with their children, and particularly, I mean, for the women it was higher, but for the dads it was 30 seconds in a day. Um, and they found that, and they did further research, I can't remember what it was, but if you have 8 minutes of interactive time with your child, like really one-on-one interaction, that helped the child's development significantly. Have
Yes.
you experienced things like that? And what would you encourage people to do in those scenarios?
I haven't looked at the research. Even though I'm trained to work with kids, I've been working a lot with adults and the children within. I think children need both parents if they're lucky enough to have both parents. If they have one parent, they need to have, whatever it is, they need the attention of their parent.
Yeah.
And there could be a certain time that the phone is used and then put aside, because love is acceptance. Love gets demonstrated
Yeah.
by attention. And lines of communication are formed where, when kids come home from school, when we ask, "How was your day?" that could be elaborated when the lines of communication are open.
Yeah.
It's not just, "Oh, the day was fine." So many things happen at school. It was fine. Well, give me a play by play. And that play by play and the communication at dinner, sitting together for dinner. We always sat for dinner together. How was your day? When I was growing up, and with my kids, I have 3 children and 4 grandkids, and one additional one on the way.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And we sit around. When they were growing up with me, they sat around a table to eat and to talk, and to open those lines of communication. Because when they get to be 16 and 17, they're going to be going off to school, and you don't have much say. That they've developed to such a degree, the rest of their development is going to be mostly on their own. So you have your influence when they're young. You develop that trust when you're young, when they're young.
So you really want to encourage them to develop a very strong inner child for them when they're adults. I think
Yes.
part of that you talk about that you help people who, when they want more out of life. Um, what are some of the inhibitions people find that prevent them from getting the things they want, and how do you help them overcome that?
You know, that learned helplessness with the dogs,
Yeah.
that affects us too. Some people have not had the opportunities that others have had. Some people feel a lack of self-esteem. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I heard someone saying of himself, "Who would want me?" Those attitudes lead us somewhere.
Mhm.
They lead to feelings, they lead to friends who will maybe not be so positive.
Yeah.
And so I emphasize to my clients how strong they are, that you've forgotten how powerful. I use the word powerful. It was both Nelson Mandela and Marianne Williamson who said, it's not that we're afraid that we can't do something. We're afraid of our own power.
Mm, interesting.
And so I I want them to hear it from someone, and they're going to hear it from me. You're powerful. So so we work to fill that in. Because
So,
as you said before, and I added if I'm complaining about my mother and I stop complaining about my mother, there's space there
yeah.
for me to grow.
Is growing
And
scary? Do you find people find that growing scary?
yes, yes.
So how
The
do you
success is scary. Go ahead.
is it like we have an internal, thermometer, so to speak, like you have in your house? You set the temperature to a certain level, and if you move too far, if it gets too hot, it turns off, so it cools down, then if it gets too cold, it turns back on. Do we operate the same way? Like, if we have a situation of ourself, and we push too far beyond that, do we sabotage? And how do we stop that sabotage?
One client asked me recently, am I sabotaging? And I take that very carefully when someone says it, and we investigate it.
Mm.
I know personally that when I get something that I want, that I've wanted, handling it is scary.
Yeah.
It's new. I'm in a new skill. I'm in a new stage because I am publishing a book in the summer and I need to do podcasts and I need to get out there. It's scary as hell for me. What do I do for a living, Damien? I listen. I listen to people. And when I speak, they don't want to hear me speak a lot. I need to speak judiciously so that I get the point across.
Yes.
So speaking out, developing in this way is scary for me. I hear, go ahead.
I was going to say, some people would really, I would imagine a lot of people would love to hear that because, like, they would imagine someone like yourself is just, always very confident but to step into an area where said you mostly listen to then have to be in a situation where you're talking is scary. Like, I mean, how do you deal with that?
I went to Toastmasters and I'm an advanced speaker with Toastmasters. That's how I handled it. And I've been there since 2013. We're so supportive of one another. Then I have supportive friends. And then as a psychologist, I have a psychologist that I talk to.
Yeah.
My family is very supportive. Yesterday, I got the Department of Buildings approval. I had texts with confetti, I called each of my kids, yay! So it's a very supportive family. And the renovation is beyond my comfort zone. I'm spending loads of money with people helping me, going through the approval process, which in New York City is a big challenge by myself. And so, yes, it's scary. All of this is scary, but it doesn't prevent me from doing it.
It's interesting that
That's
you.
the thing.
I was going to say it's interesting that you mentioned about Toastmasters and reaching out to other people as well. And I'm familiar with the Toastmasters organisation. I'm a member here in Australia as well, and I noticed in one of the things that was said is like there is no failure in this room. So how important is it for people? Or I would imagine it's very important for people to reach out if they're feeling. Because you mentioned about this connection about sharing, and it reminds me of the movie Crocodile Dundee, when the lady asked him, don't you have a psychologist in Walkabout Creek, someone to talk to? How do you deal with your problems? And so, well, we don't have a psychologist, we have a Wally. She goes, what's a Wally? And it's like, well, if we have a problem, we tell Wally, Wally tells everybody else, no more problem.
It's not as easy as that.
No. But how important is that? Like if for someone we talked about, people that might be feeling anxious or feeling depression or stuck, to actually reach out and know, because I could imagine like if someone reached out to you, you would be more than willing to have a chat with them and guide them to the right place. And I would be the same, and I would imagine most people would be like that. If someone come to them and said, "Look, I need some help. Can you give some suggestions or just have a listen?" I would imagine most people would do that. So is that something, I just wanted to raise that because I would imagine from your perspective, you would help other people. And for people that are listening that might be feeling, a little bit depressed or a little bit anxious, would you encourage them to just reach out to someone, or what
I
would you
would.
encourage them to?
I would. I would first suggest, depending upon what they're experiencing, if it's depression, often it needs professional help
Yeah.
because it's multi-pronged.
Yes.
If it's, I feel alone,
Hmm.
reach out to friends. If you don't have friends, find some.
Yeah.
I remember walking in the park with a friend, and I said, Jonathan, I need more friends. He said, Linda, draw a larger circle and include people. And since then, I've done that. So I would suggest they reach out. They could to friends if they could look at some self-help books. But if they need somebody, if it's persisting, they could do some research and find somebody. The match between the client and the facilitator is the most important part of a successful outcome.
Yeah.
That was done in research some years ago.
Yeah.
So it's important to find, some people say, oh, I had a horrible experience. Find somebody else
Yes.
and pray. If they don't believe in a creator, believe in nature. Meditate on nature.
Okay, we need to move on to your writing, and I've looked at some of your writing, and I must say I'm quite fascinated, especially some of the and I think that emphasis you talked about play flows through your writing. I look at some of your titles of your blogs, and you've got Hats on the Beach and Henry and the Three Puddles, Playing Outside My Window. With your writing style, what inspires you to write that particular way? It seems to be so that there's a lot of fun there. There's and it's coming from a different perspective, not what you would, well, from me, what I would have expected coming from a psychologist. It seems to be, it's a lot lighter, but there's a lot of depth there as well. How do you start with those writings?
As I mentioned before, I didn't want to write at all until my publisher, what she said was so true. But once I started writing, I loved it.
Yeah.
And I find that I've tapped into a playful, creative side of me. I could laugh at a lot of things. And sometimes in my sessions, I say, can I joke about this? And if they say yes, and it lightens the mood.
Mm.
But I have a very silly child within.
Love it.
My sister said to me, you're acting like a child. Yes, I said. I do have an active child within,
Yeah.
a happy. And it took years of counseling to develop that. And that's why I want in my repertoire of how I work.
Yeah, how important is that though, to find your inner child, and allow that to come through at times?
For a creative person, I think it's very, very important. For someone who wants to develop creativity, I think it's very important. I don't know that everybody is going to run and say, hey, I want to know my inner child. It's maybe not for everybody. But so there was a cartoon, and in the cartoon, it had the Association of Functional Families.
Yeah.
The Association of Functional Families. And there were two people in the audience. And so we all have issues from childhood.
Yeah.
And they come with us. They come with us until we deal with them. And that is the unconscious that needs to be made conscious. Because before the age of 7, most things are unconscious. At 7, the ego develops and a child can have a conversation with self. But before the age of 7, the child has no defenses. So it's something to consider.
Yeah. And before we get to your latest book, there's another article that I'd like to touch on, and if you wouldn't mind talking about it. The title is "Why Intelligent People Do Stupid Things: Cracked Foundations, the Void, and the Magic of Breathing." Fascinating title. And I must say, I consider myself reasonably intelligent, and I've done some very stupid things in my life. Do you want to tell us a bit about that article, where that came from, and what you were trying to achieve with that?
Well, I have a colleague and friend, uh, Michael, who put that out there. This is the title, Linda. Uh, I want to write this. Would you write something with me? And at first, I thought, is it spiritual? It sounds so disrespectful. So then a friend, a very spiritual friend, said, "Oh, it's hilarious, Linda." I said, "Okay," I felt better. I got a different perspective. And Michael is talking about people who have suffered a lot. And there's always the path to health in 85% of the population. There's a path toward health. And so I wanted to take it in because I'm a positive person. I deal in positivity rather than negativity.
Yeah.
And so I took it to the place of you can do breathing. These are some skills that you can use, and in a sense, until you get to another stage.
Yeah.
Use this, try this, and see if it helps. And then if it doesn't, I had somebody reach out to me for counseling from a far off island somewhere because he read the article, but he didn't come back. He didn't come back. He just wanted to hear what I had to say. And so it's a focus on, as I said, a lot of, I would say, trauma for someone. Cracked foundation
Yeah.
is somebody shattered, and you need to start very gently.
Yes.
And meditation and prayer. And I don't think, I'm not sure if I mentioned counseling at the end of the article. I haven't read it in a long time, but I would always start with something a little spiritual because instead of counseling, people can heal spiritually. Eckhart Tolle reports that he was suicidal, went to sleep, got up, and he was awakened, almost like Buddha.
Yeah.
Which is remarkable. So I joke, sure, it's okay for you, but that's not my, I'm having a much longer period of time to get there.
It's taking me longer to wake up.
Indeed, indeed. Have I answered your question about the article?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it really stood out because looking at a lot of the articles that you wrote, there's an element of fun there. There's an element of joy, and they are a joy to read. I mean, they're nice and short, and I would encourage people to jump on Linda's website and have a look at the blogs there. There's some really good wisdoms, and I think in your first book, you have an ebook. Is that you combined a number? There's I think it's 49 individual articles that you combined into one book, Compassion in My Own Words. Is that
Yes.
that how that
It's
come
the
about?
first year. Pardon?
Is that how that came about?
Yes, I was working with an assistant, and we discussed my putting it in a book, which is downloadable.
Yeah.
The first year, I was doing a blog every week, so it was 49.
Yeah. So you've got almost you've got to have a few weeks off to have an annual holiday as well. That's why there's 49, I'm guessing.
I think you're right.
We'll say that it is. Now, you've got a new book coming out after the renovations. Obviously, you need to get that finished first so you can get back into your home. The A Train to Sedona, if I'm saying that correct, moving through your shadow towards the light. Do you want to tell us a bit about that book, how that came into being, and share a bit about the book?
I would. During my journey, I spent 8 years studying with a clairvoyant healer. And I went every 3 weeks to have a healing. It was not vortex, but it was Reiki, Reiki healing. She was a big influence. And we meditated every week for a couple of years, and then we went to every month. And I learned about different practices, religions, and taking out the dogma took in what resonated with my heart.
Yeah.
And then I remember, well, in short, I want to say, I'm going to go back to this. I wrote the book because I wanted my voice to be heard. Remember, I was silent and quiet and sensitive, and I listened to my clients. I wanted my voice to be heard.
Yeah.
And I wanted to share my journey toward compassion so that it would help others. Now, there are probably 8 million journeys, 8 million ways you can do it, but it's the way I did it.
Yeah.
So I was studying with this healer. I didn't know what anybody was talking about. They were talking about these spiritual things that were like Greek to me.
Yeah.
So I started reading and reading, and I came upon all these wonderful writers. And in the book, I write about some experiences like my striving for compassion, failing. And then I kind of recoup when I'm a bodhisattva, right? I try to do it in my third dimensional ego state. It fails. I strive to do something higher dimensionally, and it is successful. And I was part of my learning.
Yeah.
There are strategies, there are stories, tips for what is needed on the path, like an intention to be on the path, an attitude of responsibility to be on the path,
Mm-hmm.
understanding thoughts, meaning know what your thoughts are,
That's very true.
prayer and meditation,
Mm.
developing the ego,
Yeah.
using assertion, sense of humor, and altered behavior patterns, stepping back from the ego, coming to a point of ego love, coming to a place to understand that we are all connected, letting go of fantasies and longings that don't serve us,
Mm-hmm.
and using energy strategically and deliberately. Now, I want to go to longings and fantasies that don't serve us. A person will come in and say, I want my mother to change. It's almost an unconscious, and it comes up. And the wish is, I want my mother to love me the way I want her to love me.
Yeah.
And I say that is getting you into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's likely, I don't know, but it's unlikely. I don't know for sure, but it's unlikely that your mother is going to love you the way you want to be loved. When you can accept that, it's going to be healthier for you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're in a state of longing. You could eat, you could spend, you could gamble, because you're in a state of wanting to be loved, and people will turn to those addictions.
Yeah.
And I say, choose a well with fresh water in it. Don't go to a dry well to get quenched. And this wishing that your mother would love you the way you wanted to love you is a dry well. It's something like that, to explain that.
That's really important what you're saying there, because I mean, a lot of frustration that people experience is wanting what is to be different than what it is.
Mhm.
And how does that connect? Because I imagine that connects back to self-love as well. I mean, if you love yourself, it doesn't really matter what someone else thinks or how they behave. Is that true? Or
It's true, because if I'm loving myself, I'm not looking for my mother to change. I'm accepting her in the beautiful spirit that she is. I'm accepting her as she is. And I've grieved, trust me, I've grieved the things and that's in my book too. There were things that I didn't get that I wanted, and I had to work on those. That's my responsibility.
is that part of too, like, I mean, if you're loving something, you love it for as it is? So, like, I mean, the person coming saying, I want my mother to love me the way I want way I want to be loved. Whereas if you're really loving your mother, you would be saying, well, I just love you as you are. Is that part of that journey?
It is. It's the end results of a new beginning, to be able to say, I love her as she is, because that's the reality. And if I'm hoping she's going to be different, I'm off balance. I'm absolutely off balance.
Yeah.
I'm not in alignment with my power. It's here.
Yeah.
Because the spiritual situation is not, in a sense, feminine. This is the feminine side. This is your feminine side. This is my feminine side. Masculine is over here. I'm not, the idea is I can act this way, I can act this way, but the idea is to act this way. And that's the part of the process. I'm not going to act because I'm an angry woman because of this and that. And I've had to work through my role of being a feminist, and I am a feminist, but I'm not an angry feminist. I'm a feminist who works for women to be treated equally,
Mm-hmm.
while loving the men in my life and the men in the world.
Yeah.
So I'm a human.
No, go ahead.
Please.
No, because you do a lot of, you mentioned that you do a lot of work with women and balancing career and family. Do you touch on that in the book and as well?
I don't think I may not have put that in the book. There might be a little vignette, but there was one vignette which is sort of similar. So I'm an Italian family. I'm in an Italian family. And my father likes certain holidays, especially Father's Day, for his children to be around him. And this is about assertion. This is about a lot of things for me. My spiritual group is going on a retreat to Sedona on Father's Day. The week has Father's Day in it.
Yes.
I thought to myself, why is this happening? So I had to pull up the courage. And I remember where we were standing in this house on the deck near the grill. Dad, I will be with you for Father's Day. I had to blurt it out because it was not going to be coming out easily. And he said, oh, somebody's always missing. And I had them over for some food the week before.
Yeah.
I don't think I go into balancing family and much. I have talked about it in the blog. The book is, I can't remember. I think probably no.
You're talking about, because it says moving from your shadow towards the light. Can you explain a little bit more about what that is? Because I would imagine that's connected in some way as well. Like if shadow could be out of balance, but can you explain what you mean by moving from the shadow to? I'm putting words in your mouth now. I'm telling you what's in your book, and I haven't read it yet. Sorry about that.
Shadow. Go, please.
Yeah, no, I was going to say. So the book is moving from your shadow towards the light. I mean, what is the shadow, and what is the light?
The shadow is partly the ego.
Yeah.
It's partly the unconscious that we're trying to prod to bring up out of the darkness into the light. And the light is an aspect of creator. And it's a way to describe, I'll describe myself as I'm growing and evolving, letting go of jealousies and insecurities. I'm becoming lighter and lighter and lighter. David Hawkins has a measurement of consciousness in his book, Power versus Force, and he measures consciousness.
Yes.
So there are times that we stay at a certain point on his scale. It's hard to know where we are, but you feel lighter and brighter. When I let something go, Damien, I feel lighter and brighter. Yeah. I'm more, if somebody says something to me that's negative, I might smile and deflect it.
Yeah.
If someone says something to me, which happened disparagingly, I could use assertion. Yeah. And say, my feelings were hurt. Not you hurt my feelings. I could have chosen anything. Yeah. My feelings were hurt. and the person apologized.
Yes.
But the point is, he may not have apologized. For me, the assertion helped
Yeah.
because I spoke my truth. So as I speak my truth, as I grow in love, as I continue to face myself and grow my spirituality, I get lighter. I'm more light than dense.
Yeah.
Darkness is dense and light is quite different.
So is that part of where
And
you're I was gonna say, where you talk about the book, Unlocking the Freedom of Forgiveness. Is that lightness that you're talking about? Can you explain more about unlocking that freedom? Forgiveness?
well, forgiveness is a tricky thing. And I tell myself, and I tell all of my clients, you don't do this and forgive somebody. It could be a process because something might have to happen to me if I want to forgive. I might need a new job. I might need a new love. I might need to love myself more. I might need to see this person in a different category. There's another story I could tell you.
Yeah.
It's a little tough one, but it was when I owned the house in Sedona. I had someone managing it, and he rented it to a professional tenant. Do you know? I didn't know what that was.
Mm.
It's a tenant who never pays rent.
Okay.
Tenant goes in and occupies the
I was thinking
house.
like a corporate person, but yeah, they go in and they don't pay anything. Yes.
And so he rented to her, and she paid the first month's rent with a roommate
Mm.
and never paid again.
Yeah.
Um, so my homeowners association, because I'm far away in New York and he's right in Sedona, are you aware of the situation of all these police reports? So I called him. The police have been called like 4, 5, 6 times, brawls, screeching tires. I said, I am aware. I could go back and say, yes, I am aware. She said, well, I said, I'm going to be in the process of eviction.
Mm.
He said, we're all with you. We're praying for you. So I got an attorney. And in the process, I had someone working on the top of the house. And he called me one morning and he said, there are drug addicts in your house. And they're picking fights with my men, and I'm going to have to pull them off the job because I don't want my men to hurt them.
Yeah.
So I prayed that she would soon leave,
Mm.
and she left. And I had compassion for her.
Yeah.
I was horrified by the drug addicts. They stole things from the house, my crystals, my bike. They just took things that were in the garage because it was being worked on. And I didn't feel angry. I felt compassion for her. And I forgave her. It cost lack of rent, lawyer. It was an expensive proposition for me. And so that was one where I was able to forgive.
Because you mentioned the book is, the A Train to Sedona is the key to cultivating compassion. You're really talking about that compassion there as well. I mean, how does someone step out and go, well, and have that feeling of compassion when, when they would otherwise feel they've been wronged?
It depends on what their attitude is. If their attitude, I'll speak about myself. If my attitude is that I feel wronged and I don't want to change it, nothing's going to change it
Yeah.
until I once had a client come in. She said, I will never forgive my husband. They're sitting there. And I said, I can't help you if you
Yeah.
will never forgive him. So they came back eventually, said she worked on forgiveness.
Hmm.
Um, so if a person isn't willing, then it's the end of it.
Yeah.
And maybe it's going to take a few lifetimes if you believe in other lifetimes.
Yeah.
Or that the person will hold on to the anger and become sick. it affects the person holding it.
Yeah.
It's I could tell you more. I could tell you David Hawkins. I don't know if we have time,
Yeah, no,
but
we do. That was the other part I was going to get to, because the other part of that sentence was embracing the secrets of robust health. So when we're talking about compassion, how important is that compassion, and letting go of that one, that vengeance or whatever that feeling might be to your health.
oh, the vengeance is going to sit in every cell in your body.
Yeah.
And if that is added to by other situations, you or I are going to be, if we continue to do that, we'll get sick.
Yeah.
And so it's healthy to let go of what doesn't serve you, you see. And then we can be free and more light rather than more dense.
So
That's a very simple answer.
yeah, so it's not just a case of, you're thinking, m- vengeance or whatever it might be. Saying revenge is kind of like taking poison and expecting the other person to die. Is a quote that I've heard. But it's not just
Oh,
your thoughts, but it's like you're saying, it's in every cell of your body. And is that comes back to what you were talking about with Reiki and vortex therapy. And I love the term integrated energy therapy. This term with that was gets the issues out of your tissues. I thought that was really cool. Is that part of the process that you take people through in the book as well?
I don't do, I'm saving that for some workshops I'm going to be doing. I'm
Awesome.
going to be doing some of the Reiki and teaching from the book. Now, you asked me a question about, what was the question you asked me first?
Oh, I was asking about the connection to health, because you say embracing the secrets of robust health, which is, that was the second part of that sentence. The complete sentence is the A train to Sedona is the key to cultivating compassion in embracing the secrets of robust health. So I was looking at that connection to compassion and health, and if you wanted to explain a little bit more about that, I think the viewers would love to hear that.
When I'm in compassion, my body is I'm at rest. My brain is at rest.
Mm,
And according to Greg Braden, I can opt into the higher levels of my DNA.
yeah,
Now, at this point, I'm not angry at anybody. Everything's working at full throttle. Now, it also means to me that I'm exercising, I'm eating properly, I'm doing yoga, I'm fulfilling myself in ways that allow me to be compassionate. And the body is going to produce a wonderful product. I'm going to be very uh, healthy. Now, of course, we're doing other things, but I can't talk about everything, but the compassionate brain steps into an area which is known as 0 point, where there's the absence of motion and creativity. It's the ultimate, I think.
right. And so the book is, The A Train to Sedona, Moving Through Your Shadow to the Light. That's coming out summer. I'm assuming your summer, because ours is just finishing. So, so it'll be our winter. Um, so roughly about June-ish, is that where we're looking at the release of the book, in that vicinity?
Let's hope that my renovation is efficient and parts come in and walls get taken down properly with no issue. In order to birth this new baby of mine, I have to have a stable home.
Yes.
So I'm thinking it could be, my hope is that it will be June 19, my mother's birthday.
Awesome. What a great day to launch the book. But you can register, viewers, if you go to Linda's website, you can register for the book on the website. That's active now, from what I saw, if I saw that correctly.
Yes, they can put their contact information. I'll put them on the mailing list.
Fantastic.
And
And
then what? I want to say once I'm finished with this renovation, I'll be blogging some more. I've been posting my older blogs, and I have so many of them on Twitter. I just haven't been of the mind to be funny and creative, but I will be. I'll be blogging again, new editions.
There is that element of being creative, especially the funny side of things, because your articles are very, very hilarious. I have enjoyed reading them. They're
Thank you.
wonderful. So, and it is not. I haven't. I joke that because I'm male, I'm entitled to stay 12 years old mentally, but I don't know.
Or, well, you could have your 12-year-old child sitting next to you.
I like to let him out all the time. So, I think it. From that perspective, you've got the book coming out. What are the other things that people can reach out to you for? I mean, obviously you're a psychologist, and they can reach out for sessions with that. You mentioned some workshops. Are they coming up soon as well?
After the book is published, I'll be doing the publicity and the social media, and that is going to happen alongside that effort. And I'll be offering websites from my website.
Fantastic. Now, if people wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that? Now, there's the chance for you to sell your wares, so to speak, and give us the blurb of about you and how to contact you.
On my website, there are several contact forms. You could go to, let me see, the blog. There's integrative psychology. You could go to the A Train to Sedona. There's its own page, and put your name in the contact form and say in the message, this is what I'd like to discuss, or this is what I want.
Awesome. And we'll have those details in the blog blurb as well. Okay, we do need to wrap up, and I've taken you longer than I probably should have, but it's been so wonderful talking to you. I've really enjoyed it. If you were to leave people with one or a couple of your key wisdoms, what would they be?
A couple of quotes. Reaching into the compassionate heart segues into your highest potentials. Meaning, when we clear that heart, we can reach our highest potentials. Talking about the light, you could talk about the heart, you could talk about going into the light. We're going to reach our highest potentials, because instead of being bogged down with negativity, we're going to be saying, what would I like to create today with my 12-year-old? Another quote is, your spiritual journey is all about you. Or I say it, our spiritual journey is all about us. So when somebody comes in and cuts me off, it's an opportunity for me to grow compassion. I could say, oh, look at that. Or I could say, wonder what that was. Wonder what I can remember about myself if I look at myself in the mirror.
Beautiful.
And the other is, compassion is an everyday experience. Again, somebody could be doing 40 miles an hour in the fast lane, and I want to go somewhere fast. I could honk my horn. I could flick my lights like this. I could curse, create negativity, or I could gently flick my lights. Maybe she'll go over to the other lane. I could slow down or go into the other lane and go at a higher speed. I don't have to create negativity. It's an opportunity to create compassion. And if I fail, Damien, I get lots of choices, lots of chances and choices again. There's no judgment about this. We're all connected in an all-inclusive club.
Yeah.
The club of creator, the consciousness.
That's beautiful. It's been so wonderful having you on the show, Linda. There's just such beautiful knowledge, and I'm really excited to read the books. And my name is definitely going on the list, and it'll be there very shortly.
Thank you. I can't wait to put your name on the list.
I'll do that as soon as we're finishing. I'm going to jump on the website and put your name down. I'll put my name down. And so thank you very much for being on the show. It's been so wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Damien. The pleasure is mine.
Thank you for being part of the share.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes for others and for you.